Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 3-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Dan discuss the Twins spring training. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. The Twins spring training is well underway, and in a very uncharacteristic move, Dan, the Twins have been very active on the old hot stove.
And also late at night, David. You know, yes. I know you're trying to get some sleep, and the Twins are doing all these moves. I'm sorry, I'm tired of getting texts from you, though, at 1 a.m. your time, thinking, David, go to bed. What are you doing?
So this was odd, actually. So I was up. My wife was hosting a baby shower the next day. And so we were up printing, and I was helping her get these games together. And I get this alert on my phone. It's like 12:30 in the morning. And it's this alert from Bleacher Report that the Twins signed Carlos Correa. And I was like, this is a prank. There's no way this is true.
No, and I was starting to wonder, I started to have dreams about the Twins doing other things, literal dreams that the Twins were making big moves, like trading for star pitchers.
We were talking offline a bit about this, and you said pretty emphatically that clearly the Twins' track record is not to spend big money on free agent pitchers.
No, because it's not worth it, because I think that they see things very year to year, as we can see with the Correa deal, which we'll talk about. I mean, everything here is built towards, can they win this year? And if not, who can they trade at the trade deadline? And then can they try again next year? So it's a little different approach that I think than a lot of teams use. They're just, I think the longest pitching deal we've really seen under this regime is, it feels like just a couple years. I can't think of one that was longer than, they inherited the Maeda one, and that's only one that was multiple years. I guess they did give Dobnak, the 12-year deal at about
but they were only paying him
$1
$8 an hour or something. Well, anyway, folks, let's get into the Twins transactions because the Twins have been very busy. If you haven't been following the news, I don't even know really where to begin. So obviously the big signing we just talked about was Carlos Correa. Before we get to the Correa talk, I do want to talk a little bit about the moves the Twins made prior to that signing. So first of all, they send Mitch Garver to Texas, and they send him to Texas for a shortstop and a right-handed pitcher prospect. And Dan, that shortstop was with the Twins organization for just over 24 hours.
Yeah, bizarre. It again had that feel like, I hope they had another deal ready. I hope that they knew this was coming for his own sake.
That's the thing, is you do hope that so is Kinner I got to be honest with you, Dan. He was with the team for such a short amount of time. I didn't even learn how to say his name appropriately.
I want to say it's Kiner Falefa, but I'm with you. I didn't look it up.
But so he comes on to the Twins roster with the expectation that he's going to be the everyday shortstop for the 2022 season. However, very quickly, the Twins flip him, along with Josh Donaldson and the most important piece, Dan, Ben Rortvedt, to the New York Yankees for Gary Sanchez, a catcher-ish, we'll call him.
Yes.
And Gio Urshela, who is a third baseman primarily. He can play a couple other places around the field, but that's where he had almost all of his appearances the last couple of years.
So this reminded me of two things, David. So one is going to be maybe more obscure than the other. The first, well, I don't know which one's more obscure than the other, is when I had NHL 95 on the Sega Genesis, you could gradually improve your team by making little trade after little trade after little trade until eventually you have Jaromir Jagr on your team, right?
Yes,
that was kind of the goal. The other thing is the eBay, where you start with a paperclip and you get a jumbo jet.
Bigger, better.
I think that's the system of the Falvey management plan, right?
Yes. You start with a thumbtack, and you go to a candle, and then you go to a set of books. It's perfect.
And then you suddenly have an MVP shortstop.
It's amazing how that all works out. But so, obviously, Josh Donaldson moving to the Yankees is probably the most significant portion of that trade, mainly, Dan, because it removes $50 million off the payroll for the Twins.
That's so much money to just, how big are payrolls here? That was nuts. Made a lot of sense. We talked about this last year, how, at the trade deadline, how Josh Donaldson had a lot of trade value, we hoped. I'm a little bit stunned on the Yankees took all of that salary on.
Shocking.
On the back half of a contract, where this is, again, one of those moves where it's like, well, the Twins got the better value years, though that's only in theory because Josh Donaldson played so little.
And you know what? Josh Donaldson has a very Yankee attitude, I think, so maybe he'll fit in better there than he did in Minnesota.
It's fine having him gone, though I do wonder who's going to play third base on a regular basis now for this team.
Well, okay, so that's an interesting question. So like I said, the Twins got Gary Sanchez, who honestly, this is going to be sort of a rebuild project for Sanchez to see if he can resurrect his rookie year numbers. He's a terrible catcher, Dan. Everybody knows it. Probably the worst in the league who was getting regular playing time behind the plate.
What makes him a terrible catcher?
A lot of pass balls, calls games poorly. You can look at all the advanced stats. It's not even close, Dan. He is bad.
So then why did the Twins get him?
To be honest, I'm not exactly sure what the thought process is here because, one, he's right-handed, which really bothers me because Jeffers is right-handed. And that was one of the reasons why you're like, oh, of course they move on from Garver so you can have a left-handed and a right-handed catcher.
Sure.
So I honestly don't think that Sanchez is going to catch all that many games for the Twins, but he's in a contract year and he wants to market himself as a catcher. So of course he's going to want those starts behind the plate, but he needs to get better if he's going to get any sort of significant time there.
And I will be curious to see, because we need to talk more at some point about calling a game and how important that is for a catcher. That I think that's something that is not, we talk so much about pitch framing. I don't care about pitch framing, not nearly as much as not nearly as much as I care about, like, do you know how to get a guy out when you got two strikes on him? So I am curious to see how he does that. And I'm with you on that because as much as Ben Rortvedt, well, he has a left-handed bat. And the Twins have really never had a great left-handed bat since the great Joe Mauer. So
sure.
We don't have that one there for you. I thought you were going to.
We don't have time to get into the Joe Mauer debate right now. But anyway, as far as the other signing here, so Urshela, he is a third baseman. So I was comparing his numbers to Arise numbers, the exact same fielding percentage at third base. However, it pained me a little bit, Dan, because this last week I've watched a lot of Yankee highlights. And that's not something that I find myself doing all that often.
Sorry.
But I wanted to see these guys in action more than I had a little bit prior to this trade, obviously. And Urshela, man, he feels well. You can tell he's got quick hands, quick reactions, and a power arm at third base. I think if I had to choose between him and Arise at third base, I'll take Urshela. However, I still want Arise's bat in the lineup.
We saw this in previous years, though, where Rocco will move players around. I mean, he played Nick Gordon in center.
Okay, but hang on now, though. Playing Arise at third base is a lot different than playing Nick Gordon in center field.
That's not a fair comparison.
No, not at all.
He will find ways to get Arise at bat. Somebody's going to get hurt, and they're going to need him. It's a long season, and so I'm not worried about that. Though, again, I don't love seeing Arise in left field, but I suspect we're going to see Luis Arise playing some left field this year.
I don't think so. I think that's done. I do. I think he's either going to play at third base or he's going to play at second base on Polanco's off days where Polanco's at DH.
No, I think we see him in left. I'd put an over-under at 10 games.
In left field?
In left field.
Full games? Because I could see him as
I'd say
the
he
first
starts,
3 innings
he starts
and they move
10
him.
and left.
Starts 10 and left.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we can work out a bet there, I think.
We should, what we got to do is we got to come up with some interesting over-unders for our season preview episode.
Yes.
And that's going to be one of them. I'm going to throw that on there.
Again, prior to us getting to the Correa trade, one other thing, the Twins signed Jose Godoy, who was a catcher for the Mariners for a few games last season. He is a left-handed bat, and Rocco loves to have that third catcher. Since we don't have the turtle anymore, Dan, it seems possible that he might make the roster just because he's a left-handed bat and he can catch. His
career WAR with 37 at-bats is negative 0.1. So, that seems about right for the Twins.
Equals out to the turtle, I think, right?
I mean, we'll see. It goes to your point about Sanchez, where he's probably just not going to catch very much. It does create some concern about roster flexibility, but at the same time, we didn't really see the turtle actually catch very many games in the end.
No, almost none, right? Like, it was more like when he was an emergency catcher in most situations when he was actually behind the plate. And then the other signing, this one is probably, hopefully more impactful than I thought it was when I first saw the headline stream across my screen. They signed Joe Smith, the veteran guy who's hoping to get 1,000 appearances is his goal for MLB games. Had a rough season last year, and I guess he went through some personal stuff with COVID, and I guess his mom passed away, so hard times for him to sort of acclimate to the different teams and moves he made. But so hopefully he's a bounce back candidate for this year for the Twins.
That's how the Twins deal with relief pitchers, right? They look for the bounce back candidates, and then they let them go, and sometimes they bounce back elsewhere. So, we'll
correct.
see. By the way,
we can only think of like 4 guys from last year.
Oh, that's it. Can you hear the name Joe Smith and not think of the Minnesota Timberwolves, the franchise ruining trade?
And like the Avalanche player, right? Like there's a whole bunch of guys who you could go back to. It's like, it's a pretty common name, turns out.
Well, can we talk about Carlos Correa now? please?
Yeah. Just once you get through the shock of it, right? Because nobody saw this coming. It is super important, though, that we mention that the deal is weird. It's an odd structure, $35.1 million a year, 3-year deal. However, he has an opt-out after each season. So assuming that he has a really good season or even an okay season this year with the Twins, you can bet he's gone if he hasn't already been traded at the deadline.
Yeah, the Twins actually don't want him to stick around for the next couple seasons because that means he's had a pretty serious decline or an injury, something where he's not going to get more than the $35 million somewhere else. And Gleeman wrote a really good article, I think, about this for The Athletic, as he always does with contract articles. He talked about how with the crop of shortstops being so good this year, but maybe not so great next year, that this is a way for Correa to take advantage of that next season and then get that big contract there wherever he might. So he might be a Yankee next year, even though he's not now. And obviously the Twins will potentially need to make room for Royce Lewis if he doesn't tear another ligament in another joint.
Yeah, something terrible would have had to have happened. Or let's say they win the World Series and he just really wants to stick on that train, Dan Thompson.
Well, there's a few more things need to happen, I think, before we can say they're going to contend for a World Series.
Quick question on Correa, though. So obviously he's one of the best shortstops in the game, if not the best. Do you think Twins fans are going to have a short memory as far as the Astros and all of the sort of drama and the cheating scandal?
What drama, David?
No, that's what I'm saying. Is that going to be the approach of Twins fans, or is Correa going to be greeted with booze and trash can banging when he comes to Target Field?
Minnesotans, I think we would think about doing the trash can thing, and they'd be like, it's kind of his own deal. It's his own private life. Let's just let him. We'll just forget. Yeah, I don't think people are going to be making noises about him.
Point to Jimmy Butler as Exhibit A, as far as like a guy with not the greatest reputation, but like the Timberwolves got him, and everyone's like, Butler's the man, dude.
Yes, but we'll find a way. We'll find a way to explain it away. And especially if they really can compete this season, and Correa obviously has a great season, I think people will forget very quickly.
Yes, and he is changing his number. He's not going to be wearing number 1. He's going to be wearing number 23, which he, I guess, purchased from Royce Lewis.
Good deal, but doesn't that say something right there? Won't Royce just take it next season? I mean, like, it seems like he's going to give it right back to him next year.
I think that's exactly what the Twins want to see happen, right? They want to see Lewis get a full year at AAA, prove that he's ready at shortstop, maybe not shortstop. That's another question for another day, potentially. But right now, the Twins do have him dog-eared for that shortstop position in 2023, I think.
Well, David, we got to move. We have so many things to talk about. We're not going to get to everything here, but how about you take us into our next area?
Real quick, we're just going to touch about the new rules that have been implemented since our last podcast. Nothing major here. I'm going to go sort of in order of severity. Confirmed doubleheaders are going to stay at 9 innings instead of 7, so I think we're both happy about that. Then the rosters have expanded from 26 to 28 through May 1st, which is going to be super helpful for the Twins because honestly, it's coming down to a coin flip for a lot of the questions about who comes on the roster as a reliever, Dan.
You're right about the pitchers. I'm just as concerned about the position players because I think there's also just a lot of questions after the starting lineup.
Maybe. I guess the only question that I really have is about shortstop, is really the question about backups and potentially the outfield because, Dan, I hate to say this, my goodness, it looks like Jake Cave is going to find himself on this roster.
I knew it. I was waiting for you to have to say it. Jake Cave is going to make this team.
I just don't see a way for that not to be the case because he can play center field, and that's the biggest reason.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't go out and sign anybody else, at least at this point, who can play center, and they've made it clear they don't want to move Kepler to center much as
yes.
They just don't want him to have to do that. So yeah, it looks like Jake Cave's got a spot.
Enough. We got to stop talking about Jake Cave. I don't want. Anyway, the other rule here that they've put into place is the Otani Rule, which basically just means that pitchers who leave the game and are no longer pitching can remain in the game as the DH. It applies to Otani and maybe one other pitcher in the league who would actually they want to keep him as DH.
I mean, you're a purist, David. This must drive you nuts, doesn't it?
No.
This doesn't drive you nuts?
No, why would this drive me nuts? Because to me, it's just like shifting a position player to DH.
I don't even understand the DH rule very clearly anyway. It seems very, why couldn't they do this before? I don't understand.
Well, so there's a few different logistical questions about the DH, and it's the same like anytime that you're doing double switches and things in the NL prior to the
But like,
DH
David, there
adoption.
are managers who don't seem to understand this system of the double switch and what the DH does. Like, does this make it less or more complicated? Can you just tell me that?
I think less, because as long as you understand that your DH position is now given to the pitching hitter's slot.
It's very confusing, but yes, it's the Shohei. Great for Shohei. Shohei and Babe Ruth. I feel like that's kind of it.
But anyway, so then the rule change, Dan, that we were so excited went away, has been resurrected, Dan, and now extra innings will now start with a runner on second, just like last year.
Are we going to do this every month? Like, are they just going to decide to change rules mid-season? This seems a little bit close to the season to just be still working out rules.
It does, but to be fair, this is just because it was like the last piece of the CBA agreement to be ironed out. There's one more question about compensation picks for qualifying offers, but it sounds like the qualifying offers are going to go away. There's just an outstanding question about international draft picks that's sort of up in the air, but that's going to be done away with, I think, come the end of this season. They'll have that all ironed out.
But why didn't they do my thing where we could put the runner there after the 11th inning? Why was that not a reasonable compromise, David?
It's a fair question, one that I don't like, but I guess it's a fair question that they didn't listen to the podcast and respond to your concerns. So I talked to my brother about this. He's not a big baseball guy, but he's very thoughtful and sort of analytical in his thinking. And he said, what if instead of putting the runner on second, what if they lower the ball count to 3 balls for a walk?
Why don't they just bring the bases in, David? Let's just play 60 feet per base or something like that.
Well,
no,
okay,
you can't do that. That's a pretty crucial change. With
as opposed to putting a guy on second?
Yeah, but you can't change the balls and the strike counts. Right? I do that with my children to make things more fair because my 5-year-old can't hit as well as my 8-year-old. Hang
on. Just real quick.
Yeah.
There is no debate here that changing the ball count from 4 to 3 is far less a significant change than giving the offense a free runner on second.
No, it's not. It's taking away an entire strategy. What are you talking about?
An entire strategy with a runner on second, you bunt and then you hit a sac fly and you win the game. What are you talking about?
Because now it throws off the whole balance of balls and strikes. This is not how baseball is, David.
I don't even know what to tell you right now. I can't believe this is your reaction to this. I thought it was a very clever idea because it's a minor rule shift. It will certainly speed up the game, and it doesn't just give the offense free runs.
But that's a more significant change than putting a runner at second. A runner at second changes one element of that. No, but you're changing literally every at bat then after extra innings
to speed up the game, and that's the whole reason why you have a runner on second, Dan.
No, the runner at second, I would much rather have that than the 3-ball count.
Wow. I thought you would be like, oh, this is a really neat idea. It shifts things. It speeds the game up, which is what they're after, and it's a minor rule shift.
All right. You know what would speed things up? If the pitchers just did soft toss from about 15 feet away. Let's put the cage up there. Let's block it so that all they got to do.
Yeah, I'm not even in the mood for your sarcasm, to be honest with you.
Let's take away a fielder every inning. How about that? Right? First, you lose, and you can't pick that now, apparently, because you got to be locked in pretty soon to having fielders in one spot.
Enough. Wow. I hope my brother takes significant offense.
It's not Dan. I like your brother. He's a great man. I appreciate him. I don't appreciate how you're latching on to the idea and saying that that's a better idea than just leaving the runner at second.
Oh, 100% I think it's a better idea.
Well, we obviously disagree.
Because you're still forced to produce offensively. You have to get a hit to win still.
Yeah, I know.
Assuming you're not walking the bases loaded and walking the run in.
Well, can I tell you one other thing that I am excited about that they changed?
I don't know. I'm still trying to get my thoughts together, Dan, but I guess you can try.
So the new schedule rotation starting next season, I had missed this until I think it was a Jason Stark article. So they're going to adopt a rule where teams are going to play every other team now, including the teams in the opposite league, every season. Yes. And that some of those, I believe, if not all of the National League games for the Twins' perspective, except for the Brewers, will rotate who hosts each season.
Correct. So every other year, you're guaranteed to see a team.
And as a general baseball fan, not just a Twins fan, this is great. I would love to be able to, being a West Coaster, take trips down to the Bay Area or San Diego or something like that and be able to see the Twins play there. And now it'll be every other year, not every 6th year where that can happen. And I think that's really good for the sport generally because, for people in Minnesota, they're going to get to see these guys. They're going to get to see Fernando Tatis, every other year rather than having to, again, wait every 6. So good for the sport. Love that change.
So I do too. I was texting with a couple of buddies and they were against the change actually. So they both would prefer that there be less interleague games.
Because they want to see the Guardians more?
I got to be honest with you. I don't fully understand the logic. I mean, I can see the whole idea that you really want to emphasize the whole AL versus NL perspective. But to me, it's like there's so many games this season. We can kick a couple more to the NL, I would think. No problem.
I think the Twins play enough games against their divisional opponents. And if anything, this actually makes it more fair because then it's a little more balanced for everybody. And when you're going to expand the wild card by one more, that's all the more important. You have to have a schedule that's much more balanced.
So I have a couple of questions for you, Dan, before we just get into the sort of roster construction questions that we're dealing with, out of all of the players that the Twins let go, which one are you most fearful will just have like a monster season or two here with their teams?
Mitch Garver. I mean, he's shown the potential to be a 300 hitter and a 30 home run hitter.
Yeah, I think Mitch Garver is probably the right answer. I could see Donaldson going on a pretty big tear in New York and just like really lighten things up. However, they're not going to get a full season out of him at third base. Like, he's going to be DHing, not a majority of the time necessarily, but a lot, because I assume they'll nurse him just like the Twins did as far as his hammies are concerned.
You would have to, right? After seeing him, I mean, the Yankees aren't foolish.
Yeah. Well, they are for taking on $50 million.
Wouldn't it be something? Well, we can't. I don't want to even say it, David. If the Yankees played the Twins in the playoffs, it's too depressing.
But we have Correa now, who's beaten the Yankees in the postseason all the time, Dan.
And we've got Urshela and Sanchez, so maybe they could kind of give a little payback.
Here's the big question, Dan, as far as transactions are concerned. What else do the Twins need, or what do you think that they need to have to go from now what I would consider them to be likely a wild card team to probably or likely a division winner and making a run in the postseason?
Obviously, they need starting pitching, right?
Yes.
And they probably need another reliever. I'm going to answer your question with a question.
Yes.
Do you think they have enough to get to the All-Star break now and potentially make a deal then to get better rather than to trade away assets?
I think it's going to be tricky. So we sort of passed over the Sonny Gray acquisition.
We did. That was bad of us.
So we should probably mention that. So Sonny Gray, we had to trade the first round pick from 2021. So that was Chase Petty, who is a long way from the majors, but definitely has a high ceiling. That may come back to bite the Twins, but I don't think anybody can blame them for making this trade. 2 years of Sonny Gray. But so to sort of reassess your question, Dan, about the All-Star break, I think it'd be very tricky for this team to be in a competitive position if they do not bring in one more good starting pitcher.
So in some sense, they're going to need, and I think this is the Twins just generally, they need a year where some young guys step up and have great seasons. Now,
yeah.
If you think back to 91, when I think you were, a year or two old,
I was
so you
3.
probably don't
Thank you
remember
very
this, but Chuck Knobloch had a fantastic season that year as a rookie, and that he was excellent, and that was a big deal. And I think they're going to need, to win a World Series, they're going to need a rookie pitcher, I think, to have a great year. Now, he doesn't have to be the ace, but he's going to have to be probably their third starter. And I don't know. I mean, I know they have young arms that they like. I'm just not sure. I think I agree with you. I'm not sure that they can get to the All-Star break with this bullpen and this rotation.
So that being said, we both agree then they definitely need a starting pitcher, and I think everybody who's a Twins fan thinks that way. Like, I don't think anybody's like, nah, they'll be fine. And I do think they need a bullpen arm. One more guy for the back end, I would think. Then you can sort of make do with what you have. Other than that, my only other concern, again, is the catching position, because I do think you could still bring in a guy who's a left-handed bat. But again, now that you have Sanchez on the roster, there's just not going to be room, I don't think.
No, unless they trade Sanchez, which who knows?
That's the question. I'd be okay with that. But however, everybody keeps saying like, oh, it's going to be perfect. He's got a change of scenery. He's really going to bounce back from the hard times he had in New York. I'd love to see it. I'm not convinced.
No, I'm not convinced either. If they can move him and get a pitching asset right now, I think I'd take my chances with Godoy and with Jeffers and see what you get.
Yeah, I think at most you could get a mediocre reliever, though.
Well, he would be part of a package. It wouldn't just be straight
up,
I think. But if he was part of a package to get a starting pitcher, the Athletics apparently are willing to trade anybody in any year, and still they're going to win 80 games. So maybe they look for more of the A's pitchers.
So that's a good segue. My question here, Dan, is how much are you willing to give at this point for a starting pitcher and a good reliever?
Well, before the Correa trade, I was not very willing. But now it's like, if you're going to get 1 year of Correa, then I think you have to try. And then again, you can move guys at the deadline if you have to. So I think you gotta push in. I would give up whatever the assets are, to get a number 1 or a number 2 pitcher if they can be gotten. Don't you think you'd do it?
Well, I think so, but here's my question, Dan. It's probably going to take major league ready talent.
Yeah, I mean, does that mean one of the guys they got last year for Barrios? Does it mean, what does that mean? Does it mean Royce Lewis gets traded at some point?
I think not Lewis. In my opinion, and sort of what I've read from other folks, the most likely candidates are Arise or Kepler.
Well, trade Kepler. We know my feelings about Kepler. No, I don't want to lose Arise.
I saw somebody float the idea of Kirilloff being traded, but I don't see that. I mean,
I don't see that either. I think they take their
want
chances.
That Kirilloff at first base or in left field at this point.
He was my guy. He's my breakout candidate for next season, David. I stand by that. Can't get rid of Kirilloff.
Yeah, I guess so. Then a follow-up question to that, Dan. Will you be disappointed if the Twins do trade away a decent amount of assets in order to get some starting pitching, and they have a terrible season and they have to rebuild at the end of the year.
Well, yeah, that would be disappointing.
But what I mean to say is, like, would you be happy that they tried still? Like, how much are you, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how much are you willing to forfeit now for the potential of making a run in the postseason?
I would be pretty disappointed knowing that next year looks pretty good. Even if Correa leaves, I think this team still looks pretty good next season.
No, I agree with that, especially if, like you said, those young pitchers can sort of take a step forward.
That's key. That's the key to everything here, is that can they get those guys to play great next season, and maybe even to get a little bit out of them this year. And who knows if Maeda will be able to come back at some point late in this year and play.
So, Dan, we have covered a lot of items here. So I guess what I think we should wrap up doing right now at this point in spring training, give me your starting lineup for opening day, Dan.
So I do like Buxton in the 1 or the 2. I like Polanco up there as well. I would go Buxton, Polanco, Arise, Correa, Kirilloff, Sano or Kepler, kind of depending on the matchup, Urshela and Jeffers. I like that.
Okay, well, you're not right, but that's okay.
What do you mean I'm not right?
Well, Correa needs to be in the top 3, so he's getting the at-bats.
But he's going to get the at-bats because Buxton's going to get on base like every other time.
Okay, well, that's one way to think about it.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't think it's close. Buxton, Arise, Correa, Polanco, Kirilloff, Sano, Kepler, Urshela, Jeffers.
I think who really needs the at-bats is Sano. Let's put him up there. The two spot, you think that's too high for Miguel?
Yes.
This is the first time we talked about Miguel Sano all episode. It's
true. And we should have an over-under on Sano as well. How many starts he gets at first base versus DH.
See, well, that's going to feed into... I'm going to have to actually do some mathematics there to really pencil that out.
Well, you got to think about it, because you got to think that Kirilloff is going to be playing first base some chunk of time, certainly. However, to your point, as you mentioned earlier, who's playing in left field then?
It's going to be Luis Arise, floundering in moments that are crucial. Man, that's what's going to happen.
I really hope not.
Or to be Jake Cave, right? Do you want Jake Cave? There was a window of time, by the way, that you texted me and said Eddie Rosario is coming back to the Twins.
Well, that was more in jest than like serious. Apparently,
I thought you were serious there. What the Twins lineup needs is more Eddie Rosario, I think.
How funny. Honestly, though, I think when I texted you in that moment, I did think that was a possibility. I wasn't necessarily excited about the possibility, but I did think it could very well have happened.
Mid-season, when the Braves have a fire sale, Eddie's going to come back.
What I'm really trying to do, I'm trying to find a Kirilloff shirt for my daughter, so when I take her to the games, we can get a ball out of him.
So, David, I just think we should probably run through who are the rotation locks right now, because I look at your spreadsheet, which, David, you did a marvelous job on our note sheet.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we were rooting for a Twins team that pitched in the 70s, then I think we'd have a full rotation. But I only see 4 names right there in the rotation right now. That's not enough. Yeah. They need a 5th name.
Dobnik moved to the 60-day IL. Who knows when he'll actually be ready to pitch, because it's the same issue he had that took him out of last season. So he was kind of penciled in as the 5th starter, but right now, who we know, it's not even a discussion, right? So it's Gray, Bundy, Ryan, and Ober, and then it's a blank 5th spot, Dan. And honestly, I think it's going to be for Rocco, however he feels that day, as far as who he thinks the AAA pitcher is that deserves a start at the major league level.
I really do think they're going to bring somebody in. How can they look at that now and say this is enough? They even have to just sign somebody with major league credentials that they could even cut after the end of April when the rosters have to consolidate again.
I hope that they sign somebody or they trade somebody, and I hope they trade people who I've never heard of before from the minor league system, but I just don't see that being possible, because there are a lot of teams out there, Dan, looking for that final piece to the puzzle.
Think of the starting pitcher asset you could get for Jake Cave right now with his flexibility in the field.
Like a AA guy, maybe, or if you're lucky.
Yeah, I would think so. Sorry. All right, well, David, I think this is probably enough for now. We'll have one more episode in about a week or so, and then we'll have our season preview just in a couple weeks.
It's so quick, Dan. April 7th, ladies and gentlemen. I got my open day tickets. I'm very excited.
Oh, good for you. All right, how about you send us out, David?
Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on Twitter at Men for the Win and find our Men for the Win Facebook page. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating, that would be great. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, go Twins. That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, 2 avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.